Guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with a review of another Meng dinosaur model. The Shantungosaurus Tyrannus that I had recently taken a look at actually released a little ways back, and the most recent release is this, which is the Shantungosaurus, and this one is really cool because it's a species that we really don't get very many models of, and I don't even know of anybody that has one out besides PNSO. Maybe actually the Dinosaur King series. I feel like they had released one as well, and there might be one or two others, but I don't really recall very many. So it is nice to have another nice model of this, or at least it looks nice to me. You can see the box art is phenomenal, as it always is. They do a really good job, I think, on the artwork that they include on their boxes. And then if you turn it over here to the side, you can see more information on both the figure and the company. And then if we turn it around, same thing on the back of the box, and then information on the species and the model over here on the other side. So let's pop this box open and check it out. And just like with the Shantungosaurus Tyrannus, we've got some art cards here, some very cool cards, one of which is obviously the skeletal reconstruction of our Shantungosaurus, and then the other is some really nice art for the dinosaur itself, again, sporting the look and appearance for what we have for the figure here. I'm pretty sure that's the same type of coloration that we have. And then on the back, a little information I can't read, and then a little information I can read. Again, very nice cards they include. And then here is our Shantungosaurus model itself, and I will say straight out of the gate, I do see a little difference between this one and what the artwork was showing us there, and it's actually something that's a little bit of a bummer, because if I bring in the artwork, you can see the tail has like white stripes, and I really liked that. I felt like that was a really flashy but natural look for the dinosaur, whereas on the final model here, we actually have like green and yellow and slight orange sort of tones out there for the striping. It does look very cool. Definitely gives this almost like a tropical kind of a look, which is interesting, but it is, again, a pretty decent looking figure. The detail looks maybe a little bit muted on this one, maybe even more so than we had seen on the Shantungosaurus Tyrannus, but not terrible, especially in the stomach region and stuff. Like, the detail actually looks really good, and the paintwork is pretty impressive on this one. I feel like the paintwork is fairly impressive continuously on these figures. The only thing they're ever missing is, again, a dark wash. I feel like that dark wash would absolutely pay off for these figures. But let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look, and we'll check this out from there. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Shantungosaurus, you can see we have quite the interesting looking paint scheme for this one. We've got some light tones for the face, but they kind of lead back here, and there's some black sort of outlining those light tones, and you can see the yellow sort of creeping in or beginning to creep in. Very interesting. Look at this very weird design up here in the top, which is also kind of cool but strange. It seems like they really kind of think outside the box when it comes to their paint schemes. I felt like the paint scheme on both the Sinoceratops and the Shantungosaurus Tyrannus were very unique. Same deal for this one. Again, it's also pretty nicely applied. It's not applied perfectly to where it looks like skin color. It looks, a little bit more, I think, like paint than skin color, but it's not terrible. You can also see a lighter tone here, kind of overtaking the tip of the beak, but it also sports some yellowish tones in there as well. But like I was saying before, it just kind of feels to me like the detail is a bit muted in the face. That's the same thing we saw for the Shantungosaurus Tyrannus, where I felt like the detail was a bit muted on that one in the face as well. You can see the eye is painted with a nice black, and kind of looks like it has a gloss coat, but the figure as a whole sort of has a bit of a satin shine. You see some ridges picking up, very small ridges on the back of the head there leading into the neck, though they very much so pick up in size as they move along the back of the dinosaur. You have some nice detailing as you lead down into the neck, some nice creasing and wrinkling. The dinosaur has its head turned toward its right, so I would definitely expect to see some creasing, especially on this side. As you move back, right there, you can really see the shoulder blade kind of protruding from the skin. As you lead down here into the front leg, you have some very cool green tones, very vibrant greens, also some darker variations of color kind of mixing with those vibrant greens. You've also got some nice creasing and stuff there where the leg is kind of pushing up into the body. As you move down, we transition to a lighter tone of like a brown, and then a darker tone of a brown, and then you pick up some like orangish and yellowish tones as you move down into the foot. You've got some nails painted with a gray as you lead down as well, which look fairly decent. And obviously this leg is in the process of taking a step as it's lifting up off of the ground. This leg over here is planted. As you move back up into the stomach, you can see more of those greenish tones. Again, more of the darker tones quickly overtaking those greens, as well as some light tones here on the underside, even some darker tones kind of mixing with those lighter tones. And then as you move along here, we lead back up. You can see those ridges are definitely pretty big up there on the back of the dinosaur now. The skin texture continues to look quite nice. And again, the transition is very smooth. As you move back from those yellowish tones into the green, it's an extremely lifelike and smooth transition. As you lead down here into the leg, you can pick up on the muscle definition, and you can also see that this black tone leads up and patterns out here into the tail. Not any type of like a smooth transition. It's a very abrupt transition, but still looks very natural. As you move down, you've got a nice calf muscle there. You can see a little variation of color to the calf leading down into the rear leg. Again, we transition back to like those yellowish tones. You again have the gray for the nails. It looks pretty decent. As you lead back up here into the tail, obviously, we've got a fairly thick tail leading out here. You again have some more of those kind of greenish tones picking up down here on the underside of the tail. More of the black up here that leads out, and then we begin to have that striping effect leading out into the tail, where you can see it kind of starts out with that greenish tone following along, and then the black begins striping, but we transition very smoothly to a yellow as we lead out, and definitely helps to give it a very flashy look, that's for sure. And obviously we've got a nice curve to the tail as well. The detailing on the underside looks fairly decent here as you move along. And, check out everything, like the throat is there, nicely sculpted and everything. And then we lead up here to the opposing side of the head. You can see, again, very cool looking paint scheme, but definitely a little muted as far as the detail goes. But as we lead back down into the body, again, you can see it looks pretty decent. You can even see some tensing here in the neck of our Shantungosaurus. And then you obviously have this leg again planted. The dinosaur looks like it's moving at a pretty decent rate. Doesn't to me look like it's just walking. Looks like it's kind of running or charging or something along those lines. But again, you can see the same type of paintwork, same variation of color as you move along. Maybe a little sloppiness to the paintwork of the nails here on that front foot. Like this nail looks for some reason gigantic right there. But as you move back up, again, the skin texture looks quite nice. And I feel like the stomach areas of these figures always hold the nicest detailing, and I don't know why. But the transition from the yellow again into the green is pretty smooth. They've definitely done a good job of applying the majority of the paintwork here on the figure. Again, you can see how this leg is running along. You've got the leg up, clearly in the process of taking a step. The nails again painted, that variation of color just like we saw on the initial side, and then you lead out again with that very nice looking striping effect through the course of the tail. So overall, it is actually a pretty cool version of the Shantungosaurus. And then again, the base looks pretty much just like the base for the Shantungosaurus, like almost exactly. There's no real difference in color. There's the same type of texturing and everything here. So it doesn't differ very much at all when it comes to the general appearance. You know, a lot of the time you'll get different dinosaur models, and when they have a base, they'll look very different from each other. Whereas here with this one and the Shantungosaurus, I feel like they look pretty much the same. You obviously have the footprints here of the dinosaur walking along as well. And I love the fact that this foot, it would be the rear foot that's planted, which means that this foot is a footprint that the dinosaur already left walking along. You don't always see that. A lot of the time companies will just kind of give you the footprints that you would use for the pegs and neglect the fact that the dinosaur just came from this direction and obviously would have left footprints back there. So I do like the fact that they actually included footprints there. But again, very nicely sculpted, lots of variation of color, nice dry brushing and stuff that they've added. Again, giving the base a very high quality look. And just like with the others, you have pegs on the underside of the feet, and you just have to match those pegs up with the peg holes on the base and then push it down. And the dinosaur does stand really nicely on the base, that's for sure. As far as a size goes, lengthwise from the snout to the tail, about 8.5 inches or 21.5 centimeters. And the highest point would probably be the back of the tail, about 3 inches or just shy of 8 centimeters. So maybe approaching 3.25 inches, but not quite there. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our Shantungosaurus from Meng, and you can see it sports a pretty good size. Again, it's definitely the largest figure to come from Meng so far. I would also say it's one of the most impressive. And, of course, the size would be very impressive. It is a Shantungosaurus. They're pretty darn big. So, I would have expected a decent size for this one. And you can see, again, the figure is actually, I would say, a little bit larger than a standard sort of Attack Pack, Danger Pack size range. For another size comparison, we have the Schleich Diabloceratops and Safari LTDU Tyrannus next to our Shantungosaurus, as well as a Mattel Velociraptor and Dilophosaurus. These figures at 1/72nd scale are very different than most of anything else, honestly, that I have in my collection. So the fact that they are a bit on the smaller side makes them a little hard to find figures to compare with. Like, I don't want to go search out the other figures that I have of Shantungosaurus because they're all going to be way larger and it's just not going to be a good comparison. So I'm trying to use a few figures that are at least somewhat similar in size to this. And then for a comparison with the Meng Zucheng Tyrannus, you can see again the Shantungosaurus is definitely significantly larger. And clearly even more so when you bring in the Sinoceratops, which is very puny in comparison to the Shantungosaurus. Clearly a much more impressive size on the Shantungosaurus. So I will say, these figures are kind of growing on me. You know, they're definitely not the greatest thing in the world, but they're at least creating some really cool species, some species that we don't get too often, and they have some very cool paint schemes on them. The sculpts, I feel like, could be improved when it comes to the actual vibrancy of the figures. You know, the detail does look fairly muted in many areas, and I feel like if they cleaned up the sculpts and improved the overall quality and just how vibrant the detail looks, these could be some of the best dinosaur figures on the market. They're not bad, they really aren't. Trust me, they're very nicely done and much more high quality than a lot of other companies out there. But there's just, you know, a few things they could do to improve them. The paintwork, I think, is really nicely done for the most part. Again, the transitions are pretty smooth. All of the paint almost looks natural on the figure. I think the only thing that doesn't look perfect is the paint on the face, but it's not terrible either. It's not something that I would say looks horrible. It just doesn't look quite as natural as I might expect, but it does still look pretty decent. The paint scheme is very cool as well. Again, I really feel like they were thinking outside the box on this one. The only other thing I could say that could probably improve the figures would be a dark wash to just kind of tie all of the detail together and kind of add a little realism to the figure. I definitely feel like that could help. The base is very nicely done as well, and again looks pretty much the same as the Zucheng Tyrannus, just a little bit larger obviously and switched up when it comes to the footprints and stuff. But the base is very high quality. Honestly, like I said with the Zucheng Tyrannus, maybe even a little more high quality than the dinosaur model itself. But overall, it is a very cool figure, and considering we don't have that many Shantungosaurus figures out there, I would definitely recommend grabbing it. So if you are interested, I will try to find a link to include in the description somewhere where you can purchase this. So make sure you check that link, grab it if you want it, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.